Welcome, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are
Oh,
you?
good. Just fine. Um, Getting a little warm here, but doing good.
Uh,
Objectives for the week, hardware and software. And I think that these are concepts um, that the two of you were already familiar with. Um, but I'm just putting that in here to remind you that, yes, the law office technology does involve both those things, hardware and software. Um, so yeah, um, I was proud of myself that um, even when I had employees to do it all, I learned how to do everything. I learned how to change. I could change toner. Uh, I could. This really dates me, but I could change ribbons. I don't know if you know what a ribbon is.
no, like a ribbon or?
Like that which a typewriter hits.
Oh, yes, yes, I do.
Oh, okay. So I could actually do um, and of course I had my own office most of my career, so I could do repairs and cleaning. My son and I would go in and clean uh, on Saturday morning, and definitely good for the young folks to be out there actually doing something. So he could put that on his resume if he wanted to, that he had done commercial cleaning for his dad. Um, so my kids did get involved with work projects like cleaning in the on Saturdays, and they managed to pick rocks for farmers and do things. So valuable things, and enjoyable to do that with family members and stuff, really. But learning to use all of the hardware, all of the software, I'm very glad I did. At one point, my bookkeeper said that I was spending too much on computers, but I'm 2020 hindsight, I'm glad I did. I did probably spend too much money on computers back before they were really necessary for a lot of the stuff. We could have used word processors for what computers really did at the time, but it was a learning process, so it did help. Key sources include your e-text. The other course that I was teaching does not have an e-text, but you do. And one advantage of the e-text is, uh, as opposed to just having short readings, is you learn things you didn't know you wanted to know.
Right.
So systematically going through an e-text is helpful. Um, Lecture notes frequently have the essentials, and then of course we have video and video transcript. So as I posted in the course, what do we want? We want to know what you found, where you found it, cite immediately after use of source, any use of source.
And that's including textbooks, right?
Correct. And then, of course, keep using sources even if you know the answer, because that's a good habit for law offices. Instead of just doing something on your own authority, you actually kind of gain a sort of a personal authority because you keep telling people where you found stuff. And then as they look it up, they say, oh, golly, Jennifer is right about this. She's right about that. I checked it out. She always gives us where she got it. And now her opinions make sense because they she launches her opinions out of some sources, generally tries to use more than one source, generally finds good sources. So maybe we ought to adopt Jennifer's ideas about what technology to adopt.
Okay.
Or maybe we should use Jennifer's ideas about management, which is not technically the same as technology, but a lot of the technology we use is for law office management. And we talked about that a little bit earlier today, right?
Right.
Yeah. So basically, you go there and you say, you know, we're keeping track of a lot of data that no one ever seems to want. When I print out reports, the lawyers don't read it. If you guys don't want that, should we find software that doesn't make us enter all this data? Or vice versa, you keep asking me for reports that I cannot print out. Our software doesn't do stuff like that. If you want all these reports, if you want to know exactly what the profitability is of one type of legal field versus another, we don't have that data. You know, the firm says, well, we do family law, we do criminal defense, child protection work for parents mostly. We work on bankruptcies. We do some probates. We really don't know which we should advertise in. And you say, well, they stare at you and you say, well, we don't have data from that. And the book, then maybe they have a bookkeeper and the bookkeeper says, well, I don't know either. And then you might say, well, why don't we use one of these fancy wingding law office management systems, and it will force us to enter more data. But if you don't enter the data, you don't get the answers. I mean, we'll end up having to keep time on a lot of our work. But most experts say if you keep track of your time and you do better time management, you end up managing the law firm better. And you would possibly say, well, they'd say, well, where did you find that? And you say lawyerist.com or something. You don't just say, well, I think so.
Right.
But then you also want to say, after reviewing these sources, here is what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and then launch your opinions, and that's this is kind of a little older, but I used to say quote, paraphrase, launch, and now I say what, where, what.
What, where, what?
Yeah. So what did you find? Where'd you find it? And what do you think?
Okay.
And it's basically, a lot of people get writing blocks. They're asked to do a report of some kind, or they're asked to draft something, and they're like totally stuck. Start from a basic source that maybe doesn't answer fully the questions, but get something on the page, somewhat, and show where you found it. And then show what you think about it. And maybe what you think about it is that it doesn't really answer the questions. Let's say you went to Lawyerist and you cite it, and you say, it doesn't answer these questions that I really had. But that is a partial answer in itself. If it's not in lawyerist.com, then you may have to go to manufacturers' websites that make software, make hardware. Those are not as objective maybe as something that combines different lawyers' opinions, but they're better than nothing. And then, of course, the textbook, which is pretty objective. And you can kind of compare those sources, go back and forth.
Right.
You could look up My Case directly at the My Case website. You could see what Lawyerist says about it, and you can look at what the text says about My Case or the competitors. And basically, the trick to the Excel calendar is basically that it has 2 steps. The Module 1, course content at the bottom,
Yeah.
and then the activity under assignments. Sometimes the purpose of things is not obvious, but the purpose of an activity is to say, hey, let's produce a visual aid.
Okay.
Calendars are great visual aids. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We spoke earlier about the visual aid aspect of it,
Right.
which actually helped a lot.
Yeah. One of the things that works both for students and paralegals, students of any kind, and certainly paralegals, is instead of just trying to verbally say, you know, this doesn't make sense to me, we've got way too much going on. You're asking me to do all this stuff immediately and get it and set up some kind of a court hearing. But look, I called up there, and half the time the judge is going to be on vacation, and you want me to do the impossible. Instead of complaining like that, do a visual aid.
Okay.
And I don't disagree with the idea that people should be able to complain. I mean, person should be able to vent a little bit, but the problem is if it's all venting and no visual aid, you don't really, you kind of get your point across, but you kind of don't. It's just like one of the things that they did in my office, and I suppose it was not really modern technology, but they brought up the timing of things. And we were using a lot of snail mail, more so than email at that time. But my staff said, you are giving us stuff at 4:30 p.m. and trying to get it to the post office. And we were only a block from the post office. So you tend to be pulled into doing things at the last minute. Does that sound familiar at all?
A little bit.
Okay. Well, anyway, you tend to get pulled into doing things at the last minute, and I certainly did. Well, it certainly helps more so to do it the way my staff wanted to do. They said 10:30 is too late. And I guess I agreed with them, and they wanted it 10:30. They said 4:30 is too late. They wanted it at like 4:15. I said, how about 4? I said, I'll do you one better. If I want it out in today's mail, I give it to you at 4, because you never know. There's a number of steps you need. I realized, and they showed me the steps that they needed to do: photocopies, cover letter, making sure that everything was right in the letter, envelope addressing, getting it, making sure that there were enough stamps on it. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
So I had trained my staff to challenge me rather than just to blindly do what I told them to do. I said, if you do only what I tell you to do, you're goofing up, because I will miss some things, and I want you to be able to say, Mr. Olson, you're wrong, or we need to do it a different way. So technologically and process-wise, I needed to listen to them and let them direct. And I said, yes, you are absolutely right. If I give it to you after this time, it's for the next day's mail. Now, the same thing should happen in email. Who is T. Goddard? Are you here for this class? Would you type in the chat? Are you here for Law Office Technology? It's kind of a shortened name. Can you hear me?
Now? Hello?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. No, I was actually for legal ethics.
so I probably need to go to the recorded version of that.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to get it out right away. You're probably, I hope I can get it out to you tomorrow morning, okay?
Okay, I'll look for it then. Thank you for letting
Yeah,
me know.
it may take longer. Sometimes with the internet activity, with the COVID situation, there's a huge internet activity, and sometimes WebEx system doesn't get it out for more than a day. But I will post it in the live class box, and I will put an announcement up in my sections to
Okay.
tell you when it's ready. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Have a good
You're
night.
welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's see. I got to make sure I'm still recording. Okay, I did not stop recording. Okay. Discussion rubric. We want to use interaction. Use a cited source. The more independent thinking, the better. We have a serious purpose, but you want to use the fictional situation in a kind of a fun way, encouraging the fictional Sherry or any other fictional characters in the situations that we discuss about, and show how you would do it in the workplace. How would you be the right kind of a leader in the workplace where another person there is having difficulties?
Right.
So Sherry does not like high technology, but she wants to remain in the law firm. Instead of just saying, "You're wrong, shut up, get on board," can't we help her a little bit? That's what the discussion really is about.
Yeah.
In the past, students have found videos to help Sherry, and people say, well, why do we waste the time helping a fictional character? Because a fictional character is not exactly the same as any real person, but some of the same kinds of coaching that you would do there, you could do for a real person. Law is a very harsh competitive field, but we need to stop being so hyper competitive within the law office. Within the law office, we should be more of a team.
Right.
I mean, I like team sports, but if I was playing basketball, I don't try to stop my own player from scoring.
Right.
You know, I played men's basketball, not quite to age 50, but I played in my late 40s, and although I did make my own rules, don't hurt the old guy was one of my rules. And one of my other rules is if somebody over 280 charges the lane, I don't take the charge. I don't know if you ever watched basketball very much, but you can get bowled over even if you weigh 180. You can be bowled over pretty hard by somebody who weighs 280 if they knock you down. So I had a couple of my own rules, but I was a good team player into my late 40s, so they still wanted me to play even though I was too slow to be a real big contributor because I was a team player. And I actually had people come to my law office because I played basketball. I got a kick out of that. I thought no other lawyer gets clients because they play basketball, but that was funny. And of course, now I play golf, which is a little easier for older guys to do than basketball. But we should not be hyper-competitive inside the law office. We have to be fairly hyper-competitive against the other law offices that are trying to hurt our clients' interests.
Right.
And within discussions, we're trying to work things out so that the law office works for everybody. So you want to show a quote or paraphrase. Quotes or paraphrases are cited. And you do need to get personal comments to get all the points in. And you do need 2 posts, not 1.
Okay.
1 post is not interaction.
Okay.
If somebody came up to me at the post office and said, "Are you still retired? Hi, Kirk. Bye, Kirk." Is that interaction?
No.
No, they didn't give me a chance to talk, and they didn't reply to anything I said. Didn't give me even if I replied, I said, "Oh, I guess not. I'm not retired. I'm still working for Rasmussen College." It's interaction if they reply back. Well, that's interesting. I'm thinking of taking some classes. At least they've done some interaction. Obviously, in real life, if somebody is totally uninterested in what you say and they just say, "Well, I agree with you," that's obviously not enough. But some interaction that shows the learning process is what we want to do. You do want to get clear, independent thinking, evaluating the source. If you're not sure if you did it, just do 3 posts, a starter post and 2 replies. It's okay to do a starter post that's basically a question as long as you use a source and one of your replies.
Okay.
One of the best ways to get started is just to find something in the text that doesn't make sense and put it up on the board, more or less. Do your first post, say, "This does not make 100% sense. Why is the text author saying this?"
Okay.
Or where would you ever use that kind of technology? Find something that at least somewhat puzzles you, or maybe you know the answer, but you're 90% certain. Post it anyway. Say, "Well, this seems like a puzzler. I think I've got it figured out, but not for sure." Something that might be interesting. Get it up there.
Okay.
Calendaring points. Basically, get the correct calendar, and then use red and green highlighting. The activity is not supposed to be hard. In terms of, I suppose it is in terms of because you got to do multiple steps to do it, but it's not supposed to be complicated. Chapter 6 of the text would help you review how Excel works.
Okay.
The other thing is, if you get stuck, either of you, and I'm also talking to the other student who's not able to be here with us, but in terms of getting stuck is not bad, just call.
Okay.
So if you or Cheyenne have difficulties, do not be shy about asking. I don't want you to leave the class not able to do something. I'd like you to be able to say, "I went through 11 different units and I learned something each week."
Okay.
And I hope you're going to be able to say, "I was already good at a number of the things, but I improved my skills." So it doesn't always have to be brand new things. Here's the written assignment possible points. I'm going to mute for just a minute here.
Okay.
Generally, the difficulty students have in the past is they either thought they had to describe 8 types of technology fully, or they didn't mention them at all. Doing 8 is just more or less a list. You don't want to be thorough about 8, but mention 8 from the text.
Okay, you do want at least 8 mentions, though.
Right.
That was going to be my question about it, because I wasn't quite positive if you wanted us to select out of 8 and only talk about 2, or you want us to write about 8 and type about 2.
Basically, the 8 is more or less of a list, and then select.
Okay.
And select from there. One of the things that I do, grammar, spelling, word usage. Let's say one of my students tackles something difficult and misses some of the terminology, but there's sufficient error-free content. The grammar, spelling has been earned. Once it's earned, you keep it.
Okay.
So let's say a student earns the 3 points. Do they lose it later by putting some difficult stuff in there that they weren't sure about? No, don't lose it.
Okay.
You keep what you earn. One of the things that is different and should be different about education than working world stuff is it should be a safer, easier situation in school to expand on your thinking. So if you're expanding on your thinking and at one point you make an error, that should be okay in school. At work, sometimes you got to be more cautious. We want to be more bold in school as you're learning.
Okay.
And I think you see that point already.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can have a theory about law of technology in school, and you may not be able to thoroughly test it during this course, but you may think about it during the course, start testing it against what you read, against logic, and then gradually decide that you were partially wrong about your theory, about what legal technology should be used, best ways to use certain technology, and so on. You may change your mind. During the course, you kind of expand on your thinking and you test. In the rush world, sometimes you have to take a safe alternative that you, your boss, everybody just kind of agrees on and just go with it.
Okay.
And I don't dispute that. You can't, even my super techie friend who is really, really techie, that's a lawyer, he doesn't spend a mint on technology. Of course, he can do a lot of it himself, frankly. You know, for instance, he has not purchased a document assembly program. And I thought, well, why didn't he purchase one? He would be really good at using it. Well, he created his own. So using WordPerfect software, which is very amenable to doing it. I know another techie attorney who uses 2 programs to do document assembly. So they can basically assign somebody to create a questionnaire or to fill in names and dates and facts in a questionnaire. Then they produce a whole set of legal documents out of that. It's awesome. But neither of them have invested all that much in dollars and cents, although I think maybe they put a lot of work into it. Sometimes I think they put too much work into it, but it does make sense to have a paralegal do a good share of that creation. But of course, takes a while to learn those things, but my students would be capable of doing that stuff. There's points for being you. The student starts from 0. Once points are earned, points are not lost.
Okay.
Many students, if I looked at it as some students do, and start papers at 100% and take off points, that would be terrible. I do not like to think that way at all. You start from 0 and you keep adding quality to it. So as you add personalized work and you experiment with difficult topics, unfamiliar terms, I reward independent thinking, independent drafting.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
I don't want Joe's law firm answer. I don't even want Professor Olson, me. I don't want my answer. Professor Goldman is our text author. I don't want any of those answers. I want students' answers. So in your case, of course, I want Jennifer's answer. Okay.
Okay.
I want the student's answer showing consideration of the sources plus independent thinking. Now, you may not be certain of your answer, and that's okay, because your answer in coursework is your present answer based on your present examination of the topics. Especially with legal technology, there frequently is no final complete answer to the essay questions. The answer is research, thoroughness, and showing thinking. That's the answer. So it's about you. It's about you and your thinking, but it's also about your use of sources. Bad grammar, partially wrong opinions, misunderstandings. If you marked in comment that you may be wrong about something, and I don't mean you personally, I mean any student.
Okay.
Any student who marks and comments on what they think may be a mistake, that's good legal practice. So I reward it, I don't punish it. Let's say that a student tries a hard source and has difficulty describing, explaining it. That's okay. So try stretching yourself to the degree that you can, and don't worry about it. I have too many students worried. Worry cuts down creativity, cuts down learning. Fun, make it fun. Make it exploring. As you make something fun, you learn more. You score better, and it's less painful. It's not supposed to be painful. Adult education should not be painful. Adult education should be frequently should be, if not the easiest part of your day, it should be one of the enjoyable parts of your day.
Right. So
mark your uncertainties, identify possible problems. People should be doing this at work, but frequently they're scared. Again, if a person is scared to express their opinion, even in writing at a workplace, it's not a great workplace. I realize, but that's why many of my students are trying to get into paralegal work out of the jobs that they have now. A lot of my students have had my way or the highway jobs. I'm trying to think if I've ever really had one. My first jobs were from my dad, and he was not really that way. Well, I suppose certain things when I was doing hazardous work from my dad, because we handled large animals. My dad was a veterinarian, so I suppose there were certain things where it was my way or the highway, but frequently, of course, my dad was willing to listen as far as how we did things and so on. My other jobs, I guess I'm kind of an authoritative person. Even when I did temporary labor
Yeah.
as a student, I had we had two kids, and they were kids. I was, I suppose, a kid by modern terms. We didn't call ourselves kids, but I was a young college student and doing temporary labor, and a couple of people, young acting, probably just as old as me, but they were young acting. They were messing around. We were supposed to be taking apart steel shelving, and they were messing around with it, not using their ladders, just going on steel shelving, trying to shaking them back and forth. You'd have to have seen it, but way up above the floor of this warehouse. And I went to the supervisor and I said I wanted him to get rid of those guys. I said they're a hazard to the rest of us. And the supervisor got rid of them, sent them home. But I got a kick out of that. The guy that I was working with said, "How'd you do that?" I said, "I don't know. I guess I have an authoritative way around me." And I suppose all of 19 years old, but um, maybe I was probably too serious a person. I don't know, but I got a kick out of that later on. People didn't believe me when I told them that. I said, "Hey," I said, they could have killed us. You know, the first
Yeah.
thing they do is they say these shelves are not attached to the wall. You have to use a ladder and then use the screwdriver. Do not try to shake them apart by standing on them. You know, and these guys were just doing
Right.
that, I think. But a lot of my students have had jobs where they didn't have any say in what happened. You know, and if had they had the shelf job, they would have thought, well, I have no say in this. Don't want to be that way. By the time you're done with school, I want you to think about the fact that not just you personally, but all my students. I want you to think about being an assertive person, even if some of your classmates in other classes and so on are not typically assertive. Then learn to be assertive in writing.
Okay.
Here's an example of bad writing that looks good, but since it's all copied and pasted, it's bad. Nothing is in here from the sample student. It's all from the Kirk Olson legal blog. And you'd say, well, shouldn't I score because that's something Kirk Olson, the instructor, did? No, that would not score well.
Okay.
Even though the student has not really committed plagiarism in any terrible way, because the student copied and pasted but then cited, attempted to cite. So it's not really academic misconduct, but it's a terrible paper.
Yeah.
There's nothing here from the student. Here's another student that used a source and wrote very informally, kind of slangy. This student wrote in a slangy, not really perfect way to say things, but this is so much superior because this is actually the student saying something personally.
Got it.
I'd much rather read this than either of the others.
Right.
Again, this doesn't have any personal content, neither does this. Now, certainly they could start with a source like that, but it should be a starter, not a finisher.
Got it.
I'd rather have that slangy talk that maybe sounds like a phone call with the student. I'd rather have that on the page than a bunch of perfect stuff that isn't from the student. I hate that kind of perfection. The advantages and disadvantages of print calendars. You could use a regular office printed calendar and write in handwriting, but you can't save things. If you ever have to do multiple scheduling in one case or scheduling multiple cases, that's difficult. You could do it on a whiteboard, and I suppose you could take out a camera and take photos of it, but how do you save scenarios? I would rather use Excel. Excel is easy to use once you get started with it. It does take a couple hours to sort of get familiar with it, but then once you're familiar with it, you say, well, why don't we just do a lot of this on one page and do a save, and then do a save as, and then we can do a different scenario on how to schedule this monster case, which is going to have at least 3 or 4 hearings.
Okay.
And then, of course, use the lessons and the graded activity. And these refer to cells, and you know about cells, so you didn't have any problem with this, right?
Right. No, I didn't.
If
It was just a refresher for me. I mean, really, I haven't used Excel in a while, but
right.
I mean, it's not difficult to understand or to maneuver.
But if anyway, chapter 6 reviews Excel. and work with me as we advance. And just go ahead and text me if you want a conference or a chance to go over something.
Okay.
No, that didn't turn out, did it, here? But anyway, yeah.
So I just have a question before we move further. You had said that some of the key sources in the beginning of the video, that some of them were video and video transcript.
Right.
What's the difference between the video and a video transcript?
I'll show you.
I thought they were the same.
Oh, they're the same. They're the same content.
Okay.
It's just that not everybody can use a video. There's some students are either hard of hearing or deaf.
Got it.
Other students do not. Other students would much prefer to read any step-by-step thing, even though they are not hard of hearing.
Got it.
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to display it then.
No, now I get it. I just assumed that they were both the same, but then it was in the key sources separately, so I was slightly confused.
Yeah. Yeah, the beauty of the transcript for some students is they'd rather have it in writing. I do have students, for instance, that would rather get screenshots than have me do a video.
Got it.
Screenshots are faster for me to prepare. If a student gets stuck in a how to do it thing, some of them just hate videos, even though they really have no trouble using them because their hearing is very good. But they just hate them. They'd rather have a set of screenshots.
Got it.
If you wanted to help a coworker, sometimes just 2 or 3 screenshots is better than a full explanation.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Because you just want, let's say that you were working remotely, and I hope that law firms can get back together and not do so much remote work pretty soon. But let's say that you were working remotely, or you were in a multi-city law firm, and you normally don't work remotely, but you get a question, and they say, I just don't know what you mean. How do I do that? Sometimes you just send them a couple of screenshots, and they say, oh, that's all I needed.
Got it.
Like I say, this is very detailed, but it's not supposed to be hard. Spreadsheets is basically you learn detail work and organization basically, and there's some creativity. And I think one of the best things that the lawyers get is that visual aid. When my employees wrote down the steps for getting the mail out, and I quickly comprehended why they did not want me to give them a letter to mail at the last minute, because or a document, let's say just a document. I said, well, get this out to the client. Well, they said, this needs to go to the client together with the cover letter, and we have to make a copy for the file. We have to make sure that all pages of the document are collated correctly. You see where I'm coming from?
Yes, I do.
Even if it was just an email, they still want to know that it actually went through. If it's that vital, they might be calling the client after the email or texting and saying, did you get the email with the attachment? Can you read it? Does your computer pick it up? So there's a lot of detail stuff. In some ways, technology sometimes slows things up. Right now, I sometimes, if I really want to get a hold of somebody bad and I want to reply in 2 or 3 days, you know what I use? Snail mail.
Oh,
If you have a friend and you want to communicate with a friend who's been out of touch with you, sometimes sending them snail mail, because people don't get personal snail mail. It's all just ads or people asking for money or something, you know. I get a lot of requests for charitable money or whatever, but if I get a personal
right.
mail, it gets my attention. If I get one more email, that's a little harder to get my attention sometimes if it's not a school matter, if it's nothing to do with my job, if it's, you know. But if one of my friends
Right.
wants to get my attention I might see an email from a friend and I might think it's just forwarding something to me, and so I might pay no attention to it. But if I get a little card in the mail, I'm going to open it up and find out what it is.
Yeah.
And the discussion, like I say, Sherry doesn't know she's good at technology, but if she's good at word processing, she actually is.
Right.
She can do this if she has the detail skills, word processing. She can learn to do formulas too, but she just needs a little more coaching, maybe. She could try screenshots. She could try videos. Find something for Sherry, please, as you would at work.
Right.
How would you create teamwork in the law firm? We don't get to do too much teamwork in class, but we will do it in the discussions.
Okay.
Oh, this got messed up. I don't know how I did that.
Calendar hearing?
Yeah, it's calendar hearings. That's actually a good. I should leave it bad because it's an example of bad detail work. You know, I don't know what I was doing there, but the live lecture quiz word is calendar hearings.
Okay.
And again, so you list 8 types, but talk about easiest and hardest. Now,
So
maybe you can't think of a hard one, but hardest or whatever. Go ahead.
do you, and I'm only because I'm not looking at my actual blackboard right now, but for the listing of the 8 types, would you like us to also cite for some of that? Or would you just prefer it to be our own personal?
I would do 8 from the text.
Okay, 8 from the text. Okay.
So it's more about new learning
Okay.
and software and hardware count.
Oh, okay. So either one.
Yeah, both count towards the 8.
Okay.
And like I say, it doesn't have to be new startling things. It can be does not have to be special things. it's more, the 8 is just a list. You're more or less proving that you found some things to go over in the text. But then the 2 should be personal to you, something that looks really easy for you to master, but maybe you can do even better at, and then something that looks difficult for you, but you can make it work.
Okay.
And then, of course, abilities. Don't overthink ability. You have organization. You have detail work. And then you can use qualities, even though you might think a quality is not an ability, but organization, detail work, diligence, attention,
Okay.
whatever you can think of. Whatever you think. It can be personal qualities. It could be experiences. Any of those things.
Okay.
And here's some skill examples. Here's some more of them. Analysis, speed, difficult directions. I didn't mean to cross that off. Memory, accuracy, flexibility. Okay. People skills doesn't sound like it would work, but it does. Where do you get the information to enter into technology? You have to be able to say, hey, I need this information to enter this fully. Would you give me your list of time from Wednesday of last week? No, I don't want to. Well, I would really appreciate it. There's certainly bad ways to handle that person that's reluctant to show what their time spent on matters is.
Right.
And there's certainly better ways of handling it. So many of my students have people skills they don't even know they have. What previous job or life experience has given you people skills, Jennifer? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I don't have a large class.
Well, I was a caregiver, so I was a caretaker. So people skills was definitely something that I had to learn to understand, to be able to assist them, to help them feel better, to help them understand that they're in a safe environment, etc.
Okay. Yeah, definitely caregiving. That definitely develops people skills.
Yeah, I've done bookkeeping, so that was, and I've had to deal with online wires where I've actually ended up having to contact the other departments, and that didn't always work out so well, but learning how to talk to people and how to calming down situations definitely has its perks.
Definitely. Yeah, I think about it was interesting because I used to tease the clerks of court because I don't think of myself as having really that highly developed people skills, or at least I didn't think I did. But they would call on me with certain difficult cases involving like mental illness or people out of control. But I think I learned from this fellow, became a friend that was a mental health counselor. And the more agitated people became, the calmer he got.
Oh.
And I actually went in one time. The deputy sheriff said, "Do you want me in there with you on this commitment case?" I don't know if you really want to even interview this fellow. I don't recommend that, you know, that you be in there by yourself with this fellow. Well, I'm not a very small person. I'm big enough to where I thought I could take care of myself. And I just, the person was pacing, um, supposedly dangerous, but I just sat down and I said in a very calm voice, would you please sit down? I'd appreciate talking to you. I can help you. And I just said it in a very calm way, sort of like my friend Jim did. And then I actually said, um, I want you to know I have a calming effect on people.
And that worked?
Yes, but I said it in a very calm way, and he was very agitated. And I said, you know, all we're going to do is talk about how we're going to talk to the judge and how we're going to handle this matter so that you get your freedom as soon as you can. Because, of course, even though he was not very capable of dealing with things, he knew that the purpose of the hearing was to determine how soon he would be totally on his own and how long he would be in treatment and all of that for mental illness.
Right.
But I just basically talked him down and listened and gave him a chance to express himself and then worked with him. And I did actually say that too. And it was not only one person I said that to, but I said that to a few people, especially with mental illness. Interesting because I had enough of a rep that one time he had to do one of the deputies had to do a welfare check. And there was nobody at the courthouse that was able to do that on a professional basis. So I was sort of a paraprofessional at that point because I was not going up there to be a lawyer. I was going up there just to assist, you know, in case the guy was agitated. Because I had worked with this was a different person. I don't think this person was dangerous, but went up there with the deputy sheriff, and I thought, well, I was proud of that because they thought I had enough people skills to handle this. And of course, I teased the court administrator deputies. I said, I suppose you think that I understand mentally ill people because I'm ill myself, but they laughed, you know. But it actually takes more calmness. Being agitated yourself does not help. It would just cause trouble, and you know that from being a caregiver.
Yeah. It's easier to have compassion for someone that's outside of your box than inside of your box. Not to say that we don't have compassion for the ones that we love, but it's just a lot easier to be able to tame down that agitation that we get if we were with our loved ones than if we were with someone else. At least that's what I've been learning about myself.
Right. I remember many years ago, one of the people in law school, I'm trying to think of where we were talking about this, but one of our professors was talking about how all these wonderful types of internships people were getting, and how some people had prepared for law school. And one of the students stood up and she said, well, that sounds like I don't even qualify. I shouldn't even be here. What I did to prepare for law school was slinging hash. And she was really kind of upset. And she had developed actually an ability to deal with all sorts of people, working at a place where you had to deal with people, some of them out of control, and, you know, in an old-fashioned diner. I mean, she had probably seen more of life than the rest of us. She actually had those people skills, but she didn't appreciate it. She didn't understand that she was ahead of a lot of us because of spending a lot of years. And she was older than a bunch of us, although I was the second youngest, I think, in that group. I think there was the only guy younger than me was didn't even shave yet. It was funny. They teased us because most of the people in law school when I went there had already been out in the working world. They had gone through undergraduate, bachelor's degree, and most of them had been out working. You know, some of them had been teachers. Like I say, this one lady had worked in a diner and all of that, and other folks had done. Most of them had done other stuff, and there was a couple of us very, very young people too that were there. But I had had that experience of working out on the farms, and then I had done a little bit of work in the urban environment. So I had done temporary labor and some other things, so that I had at least some exposure to the urban environment and getting to know people. Worked at a hotel, temporary labor, and another job I might talk about later. But the people skills, anything you get from the working world in any way or the social world will help. And then you can get the information. Otherwise, you can't get the information. They say do the intake. Well, you can't even do the intake sheet that's supposed to go into the software, that's supposed to go into the computer, if the person will not give their name because they're angry at the world, right?
Right.
Yeah. Or if they claim that they are Napoleon Bonaparte or the king of the world or something. It's nice to be able to say, well, is your name Dave, and is your sister named Arliss? Okay, and to be able to get a straight answer from somebody who's agitated, yeah, that's wonderful. And of course, that may be what you have to enter into the software. Well, thanks for working with me. We went a little bit long, but I think it was valuable.
I agree.